Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very merry episode of Beyond the Screen. Welcome, everybody. I'll be your host today. My name is Ryan Gum. As always, with me is Jake Holtzclaw. Jake, how you doing?
I'm actually doing great. I'm in the same room as Ryan.
Do you know you might at home be listening to this and thinking, "Man, they sound different." That's because, well, one, we're sharing the same mic due to technical issues, and two, the effort that we've had to go through to make this happen is astronomical. We don't even live that far apart, but technologically, it was that. It was so
Oh, it
challenging.
was fun. I wish you guys could see the setup right now. We got cables running everywhere. We're trying to figure it out, but that makes it the very merry holiday episode because
We're here together.
we're here together. We're sharing the Christmas spirit.
We look like two guys surrounding a fire. So the mic in between us, once again, we're sharing one mic, is red. So it looks like we're just two dudes around a fire looking at each other intently telling a story.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us as always. And Merry Christmas. It is Christmas Day when this releases. So thank you so much for being here and spending, it's kind of crazy for you to be spending an hour or maybe half an hour of your day on Christmas listening to us talk about movies. But thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing us into your home
That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
or your car.
Yeah.
Or
Whatever you'd be doing on Christmas Day, that would be whatever speaker you're listening to this from. Thank you so much. Headphones, car speakers, or just TV speakers. Thank you so much. Anyway, we're going to do some quick notes. Today's special, we're going over our top three most underrated Christmas movies of the holiday season. There are a bajillion holiday movies. There's only three we're allowed to pick. We're going to say our most underrated list of three, not in any certain order, just the ones we pick. However, we do have some quick news that happened between Sunday and today in terms of cinema. So we're going to run you through that real fast. Christopher Nolan and Universal have announced that the acclaimed director's next project will be, in fact, a modern day take on Homer's Odyssey. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Homer's Odyssey, the legendary story, it follows the mythical action epic, or I should say, it is a mythical action epic following the lead character Odysseus and his decade-long journey home after the Trojan War. Jake, how excited are you for this project?
I'm pretty darn excited. So we've got Robert Pattinson, we've got Zendaya, we've got Tom Holland, among many other actors. I can only assume those are the names that I know of. So I'm super excited because this is the first time we've seen it, in film. So yeah, I can't wait. And it's Christopher Nolan, obviously. So watch that on IMAX.
Yeah,
So
Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson, watch this on IMAX.
This is going to be the game changer. Now, here's the thing about this too: is we've been hearing a lot of rumors. We knew he was casting for something. We knew that there was a lot of big names. There's a lot that Jake had just described, but there was no, like, the story was really hidden. And I'm shocked that Odysseus hasn't been seen on a big screen before. And if it has, it's been almost like day one in the early stages of cinema, which was right at about a century-year-old now in terms of movies, the talkies, I should say. So there has been no modern day take, or when I say modern day, I don't mean as in like they're taking Odysseus and his story and making it in present day. I mean using present day technology to make an Odysseus film, because I would be shocked if Nolan made it a period piece.
Yeah, this isn't Romeo and Juliet with guns.
Right, right. Yeah. No, this is, when I say, again, when I say modern day take, it's with today's technology. And that's really all we have for news. Not a lot's happened outside of Christopher Nolan doing his thing the past few days. So we're just going to go ahead and move on and get right into the special. No breaks today. You get a very special episode with Jake and I going over our three most underrated Christmas movies or holiday movies of all time. Now, obviously, there are an infantile number of holiday movies, so it's kind of tough to just pick three. So we're just going through, again, what we think are just the most underrated, and these are in no particular order. I, being the yapper that I am, I will start. And I'm going to start with Robert Zemeckis' 2009 take on A Christmas Carol. I love this movie. If you've seen anything Zemeckis, you'll kind of know his general feel from Back to the Future, from Castaway to Forrest Gump, all the way to the Polar Express, especially Polar Express. You'll kind of know that feel, especially with the animation of Polar Express. You'll know that he is very, very deep within character development. His characters stand out more than almost any director out there. He is very particular in how he presents his characters. This adaptation was written, produced, and directed through Disney by Zemeckis. So this is a guy who he has his hands in a lot of different pies in every single project he does, and more so in this one than almost any. So the thing I love the most, the visuals, is they're insane. From, again, that Polar Express level type of visual animation that is one of a kind, it separates itself from anything. Really, it's just so unique. We all know the story. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is the same thing it's always been. You have Ebenezer Scrooge getting visited by the three ghosts of Christmas, the past, present, and future, him realizing the bad in his ways, realizing he needs to change, realizing young tiny Tim will die without his help, seeing why he should be not so materialistic and should enjoy the holiday season, and so on and so forth. Nothing is different. However, I feel like this one is a lot more geared towards adults almost. The thing is about Dickens' original work is that it was a ghost story. It was scary. It was spooky. The whole point of it was to be kind of something you tell your kids to warn them about the dangers of being materialistic and greedy. And I feel like Zemeckis gets back to that. I feel like the whole point of the story, which is why it resonates with me so, is because it feels like, especially as an adult, it still hits despite knowing what's happening. You still feel like connected to this character as he's going about his journey with all of the different spirits. Obviously, with any take, there's going to be kind of your drawbacks. Specifically with me, the Ghost of Christmas Past. I don't know if you've ever seen what he looks like in this movie. So he is a candle. He's kind of the apparition of a embodiment of a candle. So he's like his head is the flame, and his body's kind of like the bottom of the wax as it goes down. And he's got arms that stick out, and he carries like I can only imagine it's like what you it's like a big version of a metal, almost like it's whatever you do to like an old candle to suffocate the flame. It's like a metal piece you put on top and it kills the flame.
Mm-hmm.
He carries a big one of those for whatever reason. And as he first appears, you have Scrooge in his bed, right? And he's like, oh, he's like pulling up his covers and he's like pulling it over his face. And it's just Jim Carrey. It's Jim Carrey motion captured. So that makes it all the more hilarious in this moment. And as he first sees the whispery voiced Ghost of Christmas Past sticks his arms out and just floats side to side all awkwardly. And the way it looks, this is the one time in this beautiful rendition in terms of the animation, it looks bad because you have the Ghost of Christmas Past, his face, whoever the actor was at motion captured, it looks like someone took photoshopped the guy's face out, made it a little bright, and just stuck it on a flame. And he is standing there staring, half smilingly, going back and forth. And you have Scrooge going, oh, oh, the whole time.
I wonder if it's one of those like 2009 gimmicks where it's like, look what we can do. Yeah, so it's like we can put a face on a flame and go, ooh.
It's got to be
That's
that.
what it was.
It's got to be that because what makes the scene worse is it lasts so long.
Yeah,
like
it was a little painful to be in the scene.
it cut back and forth like 5 times, and every time it cut back to Jim Carrey as Scrooge, he'd go, oh, and pull the thing up a little more. It's so that was a little bit of a goofy moment for me. It was a little silly, but
in that same scene, I believe Scrooge, what it recommends that the flame kill himself or put himself out.
Yeah.
It's like that would kill me, and he's like, oh, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean
you
it.
want me to so fast? Put my flame out, and he's like, no. But yeah, he's like, why don't you? You're so bright.
And spoiler alert, he ends up putting the flame out himself.
Murders his spirit in cold blood.
Yep.
They get shot into the atmosphere at like supersonic speed.
Yep.
But that secondary part especially, that's where it kind of gets like to the magical side of things, right? Like it never feels like it's too whimsical. It feels like a ghost story. And another thing too on top of it, especially with the Ghost of Christmas Present, he's almost like a biblical character. So that character is also voiced and motion captured by Jim Carrey, if I remember correctly. One, he laughs way too much. That made me kind of uncomfortable too. However, the way he's presented looks like a Jesus character, even with the crown. He almost looks like he wears a crown of thorns with the long hair, and he talks biblically. So he describes how he has 1,842 siblings is what he said. He's like, you know me and my siblings, I've got 1,800 of them. And he discusses, especially like later, Scrooge gets a kind of like a bird's eye view, which was one of the most beautiful lines in all the movie, when Present looks down at Scrooge as they're going around the town that they're living in and seeing it from a God's perspective, especially. And I'm going to butcher the exact quote, but Present says something to the effect of, very rare does man get heaven's view of the world, which was really kind of like, you wouldn't get that in like the Muppets take or like the Disney Mickey Mouse take on a Christmas Carol. You get these beautiful lines that I feel like are really kind of super rooted in source material. We've talked the past few weeks about source material and how close you stick to it. George R.R. Martin throwing his fit about creators and adapters not taking a lot from the source material. This feels like it's ripped directly from the book. It feels really close to source, and it's just very whimsical. And just from beginning to end, Jim Carrey, and this is another thing. Gary Oldman is in the film. He plays Cratchit, who is kind of the underling when Jacob Marley he dies. So then Scrooge is left to run his business with Mr. Cratchit, who is is a scary Gary, Mr. Oldman himself. So every person in this film plays their character to a T. It is just Zemeckis gets the best out of every one of his characters. When the visuals hit, they are fantastic and not just and so yeah, I love the story. I love its deep meaning. I love that Zemeckis brings it back to roots, but also brings it to a more broad audience because a kid can still watch it and enjoy it. But it feels like it's geared towards the adults, and I think it's underappreciated just as an art piece, really.
There was one thing I noticed. So we actually don't see Scrooge meet Tiny Tim, or right, and
Yeah,
he's distraught that he's died, and there was no prior, I guess, relationship built between Scrooge and Tim on the screen. Now, I mean, I can assume that he's met Cratchit's son before,
you would
but
think because
but
he knows who he
he's
is.
yeah, but he was like, no, no, Tiny Tim, he's dead. I have to change my ways or else I've killed Tiny Tim. And it's like, well, I didn't think you really cared about people in general, especially from like the beginning where you were saying, are there not sweatshops? Are there not brothels or
Right.
whatever for these homeless people to live or
Let
work?
them die.
Let them die. And so, what? What's a cripple like Tim to Scrooge in the beginning of the movie?
You almost want it to take that extra step
Hmm.
to really be like, okay, this is why it's different, other than the fact that he's being visited by a god, essentially, right? The other thing too, I'm happy you brought up that he didn't get to meet Tiny Tim in this adaptation. It feels like they ran out of money because you got to imagine back in 2009 for this type of animation, it had to cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce. At the very end of any other adaptation, you see Scrooge meet Tim. And I think of like growing up, I watched the Disney where Scrooge McDuck is Ebenezer Scrooge, right? And in that version, he shows up with the turkey. If you know in the story, you see Cratchit and his family with Tiny Tim. They're talking about how they always eat goose because they're too poor to get turkey. And in any other iteration, at least as far as I've seen, especially the one I'm most familiar with, that my childhood being the Disney, really the Mickey Mouse one, Scrooge shows up with a turkey at Cratchit's house. And you don't see that. The ending just kind of drops off. Scrooge is all happy. He's all filled with joy. He's running around full of Christmas spirit. He gives Cratchit a some money and says, "Go buy whatever for whatever. We're gonna talk about your salary." And he sends him out, and you follow Cratchit. And all that happens is he looks at the camera and says, "And then he was the best man that's ever lived." And then
Yeah.
the movie just drops off and ends.
Cratchit Cratchit became the narrator. Like after he
Why?
so Scrooge gave him money to go buy like a bunch of coal for his dying fire after telling him
Yes.
he's going to give him a raise. And then he closes the door behind him and waits for Scrooge, which was a little long, to start
Stares at this
dancing
guy dancing in the
inside of the
window.
office. And then he turns around and he starts addressing the audience. Cratchit starts addressing the audience, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends.
I think the weirdest line in that whole thing is because again, it's just Gary Oldman with a very British accent. He's like, and then he was the best. But the weirdest line is when he looks at again, looking at the audience. It says he was like another father to Tiny Tim, and it's like, but you're his father. Like, did you just forget who you are? So there are a lot of problems. Don't get me wrong, but it's still a journey. It is still when you watch a Christmas movie, are we really there to watch it for story? Let's be honest. That is kind of the icing on the cake for me for this is that you get a good story for the most part.
Yeah.
The best part for me is that you get this feeling of Christmas joy that I guess especially so A Christmas Carol is trying to perpetuate. So I love this movie. I think Zemeckis hit it right on the head with what it's supposed to be. I just wish it was about 15 minutes longer to develop those couple of scenes to be like, okay, why does Scrooge all of a sudden care besides the fact that he's being visited by gods? Why does he care about Tiny Tim? And here's your turkey. That's all I want to see. Just give me the satisfaction. It didn't. Little upset about that. Still underrated. Still a great film.
So I guess it's on to me with my first one, and I'm gonna go off of your Christmas Carol. I actually watched Bill Murray in Scrooge from 1988, which is a modern retelling of A Christmas Carol with Bill Murray as Scrooge, but he's actually a like big TV exec, and so he's actually really dark on the comedy. He is not a nice man, more so than like Scrooge being materialistic. It is Bill Murray actually just being an ass, for lack of a better word. Um, and that's about it. So, and that's kind of what carries the film. I watched this, and I think it's one of those underrated films because it makes everything else look better, in a sense. So, A Christmas Carol with Bill Murray. It is directed by Richard Donner, who did The Goonies, and it's kind of told around the same way. I would argue Goonies is far superior. But mostly, this movie just has pacing issues. It's really weird because when you go with a modern rendition, you kind of have to introduce Bill Murray's character and how this guy is different as opposed to the regular Christmas carols. And so we see him putting on a commercial for their TV station's retelling of actually A Christmas Carol as well. And then he's like, well, let's make an ad with like guns and wars and things like that. And it ends up killing an old lady. And he's like, whatever. We'll run it even more. Bad marketing, guys. Don't do that. That is
The
coming from
marketing
a
professional has
marketing
spoken.
professional. I would say if an ad kills somebody, that doesn't mean you run more spots of that ad. It gave
Okay, all
me.
right,
All
marketing
right.
police.
I
Okay.
mean, prove me wrong. I want you. We'll see in the future if anybody does that. But Scrooge is just. I think it's one of those you turn on in the background while decorating a tree, and you laugh at Bill Murray's just one-liners, and that's really most of what it is. Bill Murray carries it. It's got weird pacing issues, but it's got this modern feel to it, even though it's 88. You kind of get the sense that that's what it would be like now anyway with these CEOs and stuff like that. So underrated. It's probably at the bottom of my list. Something I wouldn't tell somebody to go out and watch. I'd probably actually tell them to go watch the 2009 animated one with Jim Carrey, just because it makes it there's something about it that's better than the original A Christmas Carol, especially for kids nowadays that they're kind of engulfed in animation, and it just makes it an easier watch for them. I think the old one could probably be slow at times.
Hmm.
But yeah, Scrooged, probably not a lot of people even know about it.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not as familiar with Scrooge, and you might have hit on this a little bit, but I'm just wanting to kind of go back on it. So obviously, as we talked about before, a lot of these A Christmas Carol always visited by Ghost A, B, and C. Is it more metaphorical in this, or is he actually like, is there actually points where he's actually visited by these spirits?
Sorry, yeah. So there are the three spirits. He's visited by one of the spirits as it's a cab driver, and he's like unapologetically a New York cab driver, and so he's an asshole. He takes Bill Murray to several different pasts, I believe. Lets him relive this failed relationship. He's reliving like parts of his past. And there is also a Jacob Marley equivalent to the TV exec before Bill Murray's character, and he died in a golfing accident. And we see a golf ball come out of the back of his head.
Oh,
And it's
fantastic.
grotesque. He's like a zombie in this one. He's not a ghost. He's a zombie, and he drops Bill Murray out of the top floor of the building. So it was, and that's kind of the pacing thing too. It's like, oh, good Lord, get on with it. And then Ghost of the Present is kind of like a Glinda from Wizard of Oz fairy. And she is abusive. She like slaps him around, and that's kind of how she brings him from one scenario to the next in the present. So he goes and he sees like his nephew from the regular A Christmas Carol. I think it's his brother in Scrooged.
Yes, he
And
doesn't have a name. He just calls him nephew.
right, and so this guy has a name. It's his brother, and he's having like kind of the same party, but it's 1988, so they're playing like charades or something. And he's like, "I know all of these answers to the TV thing, all these TV questions or the charades." But he's not actually there, and Glinda, which like a bit, I don't know her name, just keeps beating him and hitting him in the nards and slapping him to take him to each new one. And then the Ghost of Christmas Future or Christmas Future, Ghost of
Yeah.
the Future, is kind of like the same grotesque skeleton figure we always see, except under the robe when Bill Murray opens it up, there's like weird small goblin zombie things under the robe that like scream at him. And so it's a little bit on the scary side. If I was going to show my 8-year-old this movie, don't show your 8-year-old this movie. There's so much in here that you don't want them to watch,
Yeah.
aside from this scary depiction of Ghost of Christmas Future. But yes, it is doing its best to do a modern take. And Bill Murray is super mean to like the homeless, and I don't know why this woman takes him back to begin with. After he just seems to have a nervous breakdown from all these ghosts, because it's not one night in Scrooged that
Huh.
this takes place. It's like noon on this day you'll be visited, and then it gives him the whole day, and he's an asshole even after meeting the first ghost and then the second ghost, and it's not the third one where he's told he'll die and he's actually burned alive. If you want to see Bill Murray burned alive, this is the movie for you. You need to watch this movie. So, but yeah, it isn't until that point where he's like, "Oh my God, I'm going to he double hockey stick,"
Yeah.
that he becomes a nice person, and the woman takes him back and all that. So it's odd. It's just if you are tired of A Christmas Carol and you like Bill Murray, that would be why it's underrated. It's not necessarily an underrated Christmas movie as much as it
That's
is.
just it's so odd because like going back to source material, specifically the film that we just talked about prior to this with Robert Zemeckis, I feel like that warning of hey, you're going to hell, like you will be dragging the chains that you forge in life, as Jacob Marley tells Scrooge. I feel like that is warned about right from the get before the ghosts even visit him. So that kind of adds to your pacing problem. And it's another interesting fact is it seems like they changed details around because you described the two goblins are with the future. They're with present in other iterations, but their ignorance and greed, I think, are what they are. And so like they're actual like plot points, like the two beings that hide under the robe. And it's interesting that they're under future. It sounds like because to me, a Bill Murray led modern take on a classic story that's dark seems like it has a recipe to succeed in any really avenue. It's really unfortunate that these small details are kind of what ruined it.
It I think it was a writing problem, and I don't have the writer in front of me. I just think the way it was written was not ideal, and I don't know if it was because it's a modern take and they had to take extra liberties
Yeah.
because Charles Dickens wrote it for that time, and then the 2009 one was in that time, and then now you've got a 1988 modern rendition. I think there's things you have to walk around maybe. I want to give the writer credit. I want to say that that is what they had to do to make it work. But I would actually be interested, and I am against all these coming out with already told stories, but another modern one maybe, and then after that I'd call it quits. If you can't do it in 2024, 2025, you probably shouldn't do it at all.
It's been since 1988. You heard it here. We don't need remakes. We don't need modern day renditions.
You get two
You,
tries.
there is a limit. And there, listen, A Christmas Carol is on that second. It's very close. All right, moving on. If there's anything I should say first, do you have anything else you want to say about Scrooge?
Notable scene in Ghost of Christmas Present. It's played by Carol Kane, which I don't know who that is. And then Murray was actually famously injured during a slapstick scene with Ghost of Christmas Present, which is the lady who's beating him.
Oh,
So
of
he was
course.
injured.
No,
Um,
I'm sure that take is in the movie too, where he's
I'm
actually
sure.
hurt.
I'm sure. Bill Murray probably wouldn't let that slide. It'd have to be in the movie.
Yeah.
So that is it for Scrooge 1988.
Man,
Watch it at your own risk.
what a ride.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna move on. My now these aren't in any particular order, like regardless. But my second most underrated film, if we're gonna call it that in terms of a list, actually, I wasn't going to pick this movie. I do love this film, but I was discussing this very topic with one of my friends outside of the pod, and I was saying, yeah, this is the segment we're going to do, and I'm deciding between these 5 or 6 movies, and I got to whittle it down to 3, and I'm not sure. And I listed one of them, and this person, and you know who you are, and I'm not going to name drop, but you're going to be listening to this, and you're going to be laughing when you hear what I'm about to say. He goes, "The Santa Claus 3 might have been the worst film I've ever seen for a holiday movie." And I was heartbroken because that was the first Santa Claus that came out when I was like conscious. So it was like I was 5 or 6 years old when that hit theaters, and I love that movie to this day. So he says that, and as I'm trying to watch the rest of these films, I'm like, I can't just not pick this now. And I think this is a little bit of bias because I was so mad that he dares say that about one of my favorite holiday films. So the Santa Claus 3, Alan, is my second most underrated holiday film of the year. Now, when I say this, am I saying that the Santa Claus 3, for those who have seen all of the trilogy, not the sequel series that's coming out now, from 1994, I think, to 2006, if you've seen those three films, the Santa Claus 3 is the worst of the three, unequivocally. It is just not, it doesn't stack up. The first two are, I should say this about all of them, really. They build a world better than any other film, and the thing is, it's a Christmas movie. The world building is fantastic. You feel like the North Pole is huge. You really feel like Tim Allen is Santa in every single one of these films. And the thing that irks me about the Santa Claus 3 is that because it doesn't stack up to the first two, which were so classic, they're so memorable. They have all these moments, and the Santa Claus 3 doesn't necessarily. People immediately assume it's terrible. So, getting into the story of the Santa Claus 3, it is following Scott Calvin, who is the real person behind Santa. That is who Tim Allen plays. He has since remarried, and he's on the way. His wife is on the way. Her name is Carol. She is pregnant and about to deliver, right? All of this is coinciding with Christmas. So you follow the entire story is Scott Calvin trying to, one, be a better dad than he was the first time, as he says almost verbatim in the film. Be there for his wife, who is freaked out that, as she says, quote, I don't want you to be delivering while I'm delivering. So he's hoping that everything pans out. He's trying to plan for Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. And on top of it, the in-laws are in town because he's trying to make sure that his wife feels seen and loved while he's super busy, which, one, your husband is Santa and it's Christmas Eve. Why are you so pressed? Why are you so mad? Like I feel like I watched it back, and it's like, I can completely understand you being isolated, you feeling isolated, surrounded by elves and all these magical creatures, and the only other human is the guy who can't be near you. I can understand that qualm. But then he brings your father-in-law, or his father-in-law, your dad, your mom, and other bunches of family to say, hey, you have these people around you. I'll be around you when I can. Give birth before I go, or else I'm sorry. I don't know what else he's supposed to do because he's literally Santa?
So I watched a YouTube video on this. I watched Santa Claus 3 a long time ago, and I did not find the time to watch it again. But I watched a quick breakdown, and that guy had some great. I wish I could plug him for give him credit, but he had a great point. Is Scott goes and sees his family twice before he brings his wife's mother and father to the North Pole. And in prior movies, we've seen him travel to, I'm going to call it the real world, or just normal North America from the North Pole several times throughout a movie. And it seems like she's not allowed to leave.
Ooh, she held against her will?
Right. And so
Ooh.
what this guy's talking about is he's plucked her from, in Santa Claus 2, out of North America, brought her to the North Pole to marry her on a whim because he's going to not be Santa Claus if he doesn't. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that is the plot of the Santa Claus 2.
And he then almost immediately impregnates her.
Okay, hold on. It's been a few years,
Has it
not
been a few
immediately.
years?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I take that back. It's not almost immediately.
Santa got busy and
He
said, "You
got
must never
immediately
leave."
busy. And then she hasn't seen her family for a long time, and that's even pointed out when Santa Claus goes and gets them. Which, might I add, he took Sandman there and knocked him out to bring them to the North Pole.
Hold on. No, you gotta. They didn't know he was Santa. The whole that was another big plot point of the Santa Claus 3, which is a perfect kind of segue back to the story. There's this thing called the SOS, and Curtis, who is the most annoying little elf, he is now number one elf in the Santa Claus 3 because they couldn't bring back, I don't remember the elf's name, the cool elf from Santa Claus 2.
Out.
Yeah, he did age out. So they couldn't bring him back. He aged out. So they just said, you know what, Curtis, you're now the head elf in the story. And he is, again, the most annoying character in the entire film. He's like, the SOS, the secret of Santa. You must protect the secret of Santa. So that's why he brought Sandman to knock them out, because they didn't know. They thought he was from Canada. So they didn't even know he was from the North Pole. They didn't know he was Santa, even though they said, hey, you look like Santa, like multiple times in the movie. He's just like, anyway.
I'd have put the dots together. He's a toy maker in Canada, and he looks
Who
like Santa.
looks like Santa.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, anyway, anywho, they bring him up, and I guess that's kind of my point. Like, that's a great point that kind of pushes back on what I was saying. So, yeah, I think that there should have been, I guess, a little bit understanding both ways. And I'm just going to say, who knows, maybe between each movie, because there are a number of years that pass, maybe between each film, which technically was 12 years because there's some time travel involved, which we'll get to between the first one and the second one. And I think the first one and the third one, I think the second one came out in 98, 99, maybe 2000. No, 2003, actually. We're figuring it out. Anyway, she had been Mrs. Claus for at least a couple years by the point that she's about to give birth. So who knows? In that time, they could have been down, but there's a plot point with the parents that it was 2 years. So, or
Or
2000,
two,
it was 4 years,
2002.
sorry. So there was a plot point that the parents were like, there has to be a perfectly good reason why you cut us out of your lives. So, maybe she didn't. It's at least been 4 years because they make it a point in the timeline when they go back in time to say, oh, 1994, present day. So there's at least been 12 years in between the two. So,
On top of bringing her mother and father to the North Pole, it's not just other family members of hers. It is Scott Calvin's ex-wife
who they're friends?
and her daughter with another the ex-husband.
Who is Scott's niece,
And Scott's niece,
I think, or at least he calls
No.
him Uncle Scott. Is
Uncle
what she
Scott,
calls him.
but it's because it's his ex-wife's daughter with another guy.
No, you're
who
right.
They divorced.
So yes, okay. So I think another point too is that they're like, we can't just bring other people in. So her friends are just going to be his ex family because that's the only other humans we have. But
So it's kind of odd.
yeah, it is. It is. Well, even the parents make a point of that in the movie because they're like, "Oh, if you're not going to be incredibly threatened by your husband being best friends with his ex-wife, I'm not going to judge you." And Carol, that's her mom saying that. Carol, who is Santa's wife now, is like, "Ha ha." And they
Just brush it off.
Yeah.
So we've not actually gotten to who is the
best
main
part.
villain. Who's the main villain of this movie?
Yes. So sorry, this has been so convoluted. Just to all the plot points we can poke, there are a lot of holes in this. As I said, it's the worst of the three, but I still love it because it's still whimsical. You've got, just to rehash, Scott Calvin trying to grasp Christmas with family and the birth of his child that's about to happen on Christmas Day, blah, blah, blah. While all that's happening, Martin Short as Jack Frost is in the building. He shows up at the North Pole because he's actually about to be suspended from the League of Legends, I guess is what they're called. I don't remember what they're exactly, not the video game, but like essentially what happens is Santa is a part of this like league that you see in the second movie. It's got Mother Nature, Father Time, the Sandman, as we've already talked about, Cupid, Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and Jack Frost is in there. And so what's happening is they're having an emergency meeting at the North Pole because Jack Frost is putting up a bunch of Jack Frost promotional items across malls in the Northwest.
He's trying to get his own holiday.
Yes, he's trying to usurp Santa. He was accused of crimes to usurp Santa and to take Christmas from Santa, so they're going to suspend him. And so Martin Short, who is hilarious in this movie as Jack Frost, and plays a great villain. He's kind of the dad of like media, but he is so funny and he is so good at just being conniving. His Jack Frost was actually really good. But instead of getting suspended, Jack is like, what if I just become Santa's helper? And instead of anyone seeing that as a problem when they're already trying to accuse him of trying to take Christmas, they're like, oh, that's a great idea. And so they just give it to him instead of being like, well, maybe not. Like, for example, the reason they're trying to suspend him is because he calls it Frostmas.
Yeah.
Instead of Christmas, so I don't know, that short-sighted, whatever. They make him Santa's helper for the holiday season to try to help out the loaded hands of Scott Calvin. So the entirety of the rest of the movie is Jack Frost learning about the escape clause, which is the name of the Santa Claus 3, the escape clause, which essentially says if you are Santa and you don't want to be Santa anymore and you wish you were never Santa, you can get your snow globe, which every Santa, apparently, this is lore they just dropped specifically for this movie. You get your own snow globe and it is dedicated to you and your time as the big man. And if you grab a hold of the snow globe and you say, I wish I had never been Santa at all, you will get transported back to the time that you became Santa, which was you putting on the red coat for the first time, and you could just not do it. And the rest of the whatever time that passed between when you did it the first time and when you wish to not do it never happened. So time can rewrite. Jack Frost figures this out, makes sure everything that could go wrong does, and then essentially steals Santa and Christmas from Scott Calvin. And he then goes on to what's the worst thing you could do to the North Pole, the secret of Santa, and Christmas as a whole? You make it capitalism, I guess.
It became Disney World.
Yeah. He's like, capitalism. I'm bored. I don't want to take presents to people. Woo! They're gonna come to me. So yeah, I think that's just funny. It's like, what is the worst thing that Jack Frost can do? He doesn't world domination. This man is literally a super villain at this point. He is Santa. He is Jack Frost. He has a really cool thing where before he's even Santa, and it's a really cool effect. When Jack Frost goes to breathe snow or breathe ice, his face turns blue, and it's crazy. Like, and he can freeze anything. Santa can still do this when Jack Frost is Santa. On top of it, he's got these magical elves who can do anything. He's essentially, when Scott Calvin becomes Santa, he gets these magical powers to build anything he wants. Jack Frost would, in theory, have these powers while also being the god of ice. He just does. You know what? The worst thing the writers could come up with, that this evil, conniving character that we've kind of been painted to see to this point, the worst thing he can do. What if he like used capitalism on the North Pole? That's all he did, and I think that's so funny. Anywho,
That's actually scarier.
yeah, yeah, that's the worst part. Yeah.
I would like to also poke another hole, and let's not go on a tangent on this. Is where is Jack's wife? It is, so when he put on the coat, Santa's coat, when they went back in time,
Ah.
he gets transported into the future for 12 years. And then Scott gets transported 12 years into the future where he would have been if he didn't put the coat on. So he's this businessman who doesn't see his family all the time.
Yeah.
And I think they actually hate him when he's trying to like figure out, because he has no memory of the past 12 years when it teleports him there. He only has memory from when he was Santa Claus.
Yeah. Well,
So
before he became Santa, he was a jerk. So in theory, he
Yeah.
would have stayed that way.
And I think he just moves up. He has his own assistant and stuff like that. But he makes his way to the North Pole, and I don't remember how he gets up there. And he confronts him. And he's like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in 12 years." Or Jack says, "I haven't seen you in 12 years." When it's kind of like, "Oh, okay." So he's been running this place. You get the reveal of Disneyland and stuff like that. There's no Mrs. Claus. How did he skirt the rules of the second movie?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no Mrs. Frost.
Again, these are things that have just been completely. Yeah. And once again, the worst of the three. I still love it. Okay. I still love it. I don't care about plot points. We'll talk about plot holes all we want.
Okay.
So moving back to the story, Scott steals Santa Claus back and is Santa again. And I guess a plot point we missed earlier is, remember that the niece, or I guess I should say like Scott Calvin's son's half sister, who is his ex-wife's child with a new man, that they bring up because it's weird. Yeah, so her name is Lucy, and they made it a big point throughout the entire film to say, "Oh, you have the most magical hugs in the world. They're the most warm hugs ever. They're magical." So anyway, between that first time that was commented on at the very beginning of the film, "Lucy, you have really warm hugs," to this point when he steals it back and is about to go deliver presents, Jack Frost, when he first got Scott Calvin's snow globe to make him say, "I wish I wasn't Santa," and take him back in time, he freezes Lucy's parents, which is again Scott's ex-wife and her new husband. So Lucy's parents are frozen, could be dead.
Well, yeah, that kills people.
Yeah, no one knows. They could be dead. So anywho, they wheel the parents out. The elficers, as Santa calls them, which are just cop elves. The
Children
the
in
12
uniform.
the 12 shows up with Scott, or with Jack Frost. Shows up. Jack Frost could freeze them at any point. Doesn't. It's just like, ow, when one of them like rings his wrist, and it's really funny. So they bring out the frozen parents, and they're like, "Jack, unfreeze him." And he's like, "I can't. I'd have to unfreeze myself, and I'd never do that." All bratty. So then Scott, looking around, he asks Mother Nature if she can warm him. She's like, "Magical powers don't work on other beings," which I think is another plot hole somewhere. Has to be, right? Anywho, so they're out of options. What does Scott Calvin do as Santa and his all rosy cheeks and big white beard? He looks at Lucy, and he leans down, and it is the funniest scene in the whole movie because he looks at her with a small smirk, and he's like, "Why don't you go give him a hug?" She's like big-eyed looking at him like, "You think it'll work?" And he doesn't say anything. He just smirks and goes, again, without saying another word, just nods his head towards Jack Frost like, give it a try, kiddo. We got nothing else." And it is the funniest moment in the entire movie because it's the dumbest ending, and the idea that Santa was like, "Well, if it doesn't work, at least you tried."
That was actually the Hail Mary. If that didn't work, that was it.
Yeah, they were dead.
Yep.
So, and the thing is, there's not a bad idea to think they're already dead. And so he's like, "Hug the guy that killed your parents real quick. See if that makes you feel any better." And it's just, so anyway, she slowly walks up to Jack Frost, and Jack is like, "What are you gonna do, cute me to death?" And then she hugs him. She bear hugs him, arms in and all. And he goes, "Yee!" And he starts melting. And for whatever reason, he gets elf ears, a white suit, and brown hair. And during this whole thing that's happening, he goes, "What's happening?" And she goes, "I'm warming your heart," all annoyingly. And he goes, "But they said it could never be done," as if that's what he wanted from the beginning. He made it very apparent he liked the way he was. So for that point, that line was so annoying to me. This is the one part of the movie that I absolutely hate because I'm like, dog,
Come on.
did you run out of ideas? So anyway, he unfreezes. He's like, "I think I like it." They turn around, parents dethaw. They're all like, brrr, like rubbing up, and they're like alive. Christmas is saved. Right after this, Carol gives birth, And all on Christmas Eve, right before Santa's got to go, he then books it in theory across the world, delivers the presents, and all is jolly in the world. And you know what? Despite all the problems, despite the crappy ending, despite the loopholes, I love this film. And I probably just convinced a lot of you that it is still as bad as what I came in. And I don't care because this movie gives me a lot of joy. It's directed actually by the guy who directed the sequel. He didn't direct the first The Santa Claus. He directed the Santa Claus 2 and the Santa Claus 3. Michael Lembeck. Now, this guy, you kind of know his style outside of those two. He also directed The Tooth Fairy with Dwayne Johnson in 2010, which was another one that I watched randomly as a kid. That one is actually a terrible movie. So this guy just doesn't necessarily make the best. However, I love this movie.
I
I
don't
think
know. Have you seen Tooth Fairy in IMAX?
I should give that a try
It
actually.
might be a game changer.
But no, there's not a lot going for this. I won't even lie to you. As I'm sitting here talking, I'm getting more and more discouraged because I think I've just convinced you guys not to watch it. However, I love it. It
I
is
will say, watch all three straight through, binge all three Santa Clauses, and I think it might be worth it.
It is so, but it's so fun. It builds upon the world. The world still seems as big. The chemistry between Martin Short and Tim Allen is just amazing. Like they play off each other really well. Again, Martin Short is a great villain, and Tim Allen is great as Santa. He's always been great as Santa. I think that the one-liners and the quips are really funny. The story is not bad until the end, even with the plot holes. Because the thing is, again, you're not watching a Christmas movie for the story, right? You're not watching it going, does she live? For a truly Christmas movie. We're not watching Die Hard, which is a Christmas movie, but we're not watching Die Hard. We're not watching blank but blank. We're watching The Santa Claus. So I still think it's supremely underrated, and I do love this film.
All right, moving on to my second, and I don't think I have a particular order other than this is the animated movie I watch. It is Claus from 2019. It is a reimagination of the origins of Santa Claus. So it is told through the story of Jesper, which is our main character. He's a spoiled, reluctant postman, son of the director of postal in this kingdom, and he's sent to a remote town where there are two clans and families that like hate each other, and they like actual battles ensue in this town with cleavers. Like they're trying to, it's a little what's it called, squash and stretch or whatever, but we don't
Mm-hmm.
actually see a lot of violence. We don't see the blows of the cleaver. There's no blood, anything like that. But it's like they're fighting with sharp weapons, and so he's tasked with mailing 6,000 letters on this island to, I guess, regain his silk sheets and the favor of his father, so he doesn't get cut off because he's a little bit of a daddy's money kind of guy. So he ends up befriending this woodsman named Claus, and he has a bunch of old toys, and he's devised a plan to mail toys between kids who write Claus a letter, and Claus will then deliver the presents in the night. And of course, there's always some kind of a dilemma where they find out that, oh, this is just a ploy for you to go back home and get breakfast in bed and stuff like that. You didn't really care about us, kind of deal. So that makes it somewhat predictable. But J.K. Simmons voices Santa Claus, which is awesome, and he doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, it just that's what makes it hit even harder.
Mm.
Because J.K. Simmons just hits home runs every time he speaks in this movie. The art, the design of the characters is another thing that stands out to me. I don't think I've seen this movie before, but when I did, I kind of like I looked up and it's like, what are some underrated movies? And I saw this and I was like, I remember that coming out 2019. That was not that long ago, and I don't hear a lot of people saying they're watching Claus. You know, it's always Christmas Carol or Polar Express, like the big ones. But I think that this one with just this different telling of Santa Claus and the Christmas spirit changes people. And I think there's a line in the movie, and I can't remember it now, but it's like a good deed sparks other good deeds is basically what the premise of Claus's quote is. So it inspires like the whole town to be nice.
Yeah.
And it's a great movie that captures that Christmas spirit, and it ends really well. It ends with Jesper, of course, staying and growing old and having kids with the school teacher that helps them out, and he in. I won't spoil it. I don't want to spoil it, but he says, and I still get to see my friend once every year because Santa Claus, Claus becomes Santa Claus and he gets to see him every year. So I think it ends beautifully. A lot of people have their reservations about this movie because some say it has a pacing issue. Some are more like it's predictable. This storyline has been told before where he gets found out
Mm.
with going back home. You used us to get what you wanted, but in reality, you're on the main character's side because you can tell that he's changed. He's not what he used to be, and he has to prove that. And then some people say the side characters don't get much depth, but like it's really about the relationship between Jesper and Klaus or Claus. Um,
Yeah. So this is another one that I'm super unfamiliar with. However, I have seen it gain a lot of popularity this winter season, just online. Like I've seen people talking about it, but not a lot, like you're saying. And the thing is, I didn't even know how stacked the cast was. You talked about J.K. Simmons being Santa himself. You got Jason Schwartzman as Jesper. You've got Norm Macdonald as Mogans, and it goes on and on. And something that I think is really interesting about this film is the director, who's Sergio Pablos. He's the guy who created the story for Despicable Me,
yeah,
the
and
original.
I was gonna get to that eventually when and somebody wrote it. It was oh, never mind. I don't have the writer here, but I know it was first animated Netflix film nominated for an Academy Award, and then yeah, the director did Despicable Me, and then it's a hand-drawn animation but enhanced with 3D techniques for lighting and
For the
texture
shadows.
for the shadows.
Yeah, see,
And
that's
so
nuts.
it's so the way it's lit and those shadows it makes it feel warm and it's got a muted color palette which is odd enough every time you see Claus it's warm he's a woodsman he's up there he's chopping wood but overall the town is just gloomy and sad it's like a fishing town it looks like it smells everybody's got guns and knives and it's so sad and by the end of the movie it's such a happy town you know
Yeah.
so I think that would be my top underrated film is Klaus from 2019.
Yeah, this is going straight to the top of my list as a potential watch because again, I had only seen bits and pieces online and it just seems like now that I've kind of seen who's involved, who's cast and kind of the general story from what you've given, it just seems like such a whimsical tale. So yeah, I'm excited to put that on my list. On to number one in our list, or I guess the last entry for me, it's unequivocally number one. But before we do that, I want to thank you guys again. We said it at the top. Thank you for spending this holiday season with us. It kind of means more than I can describe, and I know the same with Jake here. We're just two dudes who have a love for all things film, especially, but media in general. We're nerds. Went to school together, graduated like what 6 months apart.
Hmm.
We like this guy. This is a guy that I love dearly, and I'm just thankful I get to do this with him, and I'm thankful that you guys get to hear what we have to say, but also just that you take the time, especially in the holiday season, to listen to us. So thank you so much. Moving on to my number one. I think this is, again, as I said before, this is the most underrated holiday film because it's not quite just a Christmas film. It is a holiday film. It is DreamWorks' Rise of the Guardians. This film stars Chris Pine, Alec Baldwin, Hugh Jackman, Jude Law, and Isla Fisher. This film is just magical. I remember watching this when it first came out. It came out in 2012. I was just a kid, and I remember it taking me to a place that very few films have. And the other films that were able to do this still are with me to this day in terms of like I was 6 years old when Michael Bay's Transformers came out. I still to this day love Transformers. Star Wars, I watched right after that. And in a lot of ways, Transformers led me into my love of sci-fi and all things fantasy because Star Wars was right there, and then the Lord of the Rings and so on and so forth. And it's just like very few films and IPs have had this effect on me like Rise of the Guardians. And this is a film I watch almost every single year during the holiday season, even though it's not quite a Christmas movie. It takes place around Easter, like before, during, and after. So I don't know. It's just something about it just gives me that what we were talking about earlier, that holiday feel. Moving into the story, you follow the journey of Jack Frost. It's a 300-year journey. Really, it's about one, But the story starts, you see Jack Frost rise out of a lake, out of a frozen pond. The moon, as Chris Pine, once again, who voices Jack, is describing, I was scared, and then the moon told me who I was and not to be scared. And that's all he said for 300 years. Now, the man in the moon, it's really, there's not a lot of folklore behind that, but the man in the moon is a big story driver in this realm of storytelling. So, in Rise of the Guardians, all of your big like holiday folklore. So again, the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, Sandman, and now Jack Frost are all guardians chosen by Man and Moon to protect the children and the holiday season from itself and from other beings, as we'll get into. So as Jack Frost is trying to decide who he is, figure out what his center is, that's a big deal. As Santa takes him aside after he is chosen, Jack Frost is chosen by Man and Moon to join the other four as a guardian, mainly because, as I said, other beings, Jude Law's Pitch Black, or the Boogeyman, shows up to threaten the holiday season and make kids not believe because, we lose our powers if kids don't believe in us, So Jack Frost, who is hated by the other Guardians because they see him as just he freezes pipes and he causes runny noses to them. So they see him as less. This is just a kid who doesn't know about his past life. Because as we will learn, Jack Frost had a life before he was Jack Frost. He doesn't know about his past life. He doesn't know why he was chosen. He just knows he has this power to make it snow. He has a power to cause snow days and to give kids fun. And the rest of them, being Santa, the Tooth Fairy, and all that, they just don't see him as that. One of the things that the story does so well as the story progresses, they fight the boogeyman. Jack Frost learns who he is. They save the day. It's kind of a really straightforward narrative from the A standpoint because you have multiple stories going on. This is one of the most unique and original takes on anything folklore I've ever seen in my life. So at the very beginning, when Pitch Black shows up as like a dangerous figure to these characters again, Santa, or they call him North. They don't call him Claus. They don't call him Nick. They don't call him Santa. They call him North. North, he pulls a lever and the Aurora Borealis shoots out. And that is the signal for the rest of the Guardians to say, hey, that's our signal to meet and that, hey, there's a problem. I love the idea because I've never seen anything folklore with the Aurora, at least personally, the Aurora Borealis. Super original. To the areas that these places inhabit, these people inhabit, from Santa's workshop to the Easter Bunny's warren, right? To the Tooth Fairy, she has like this, she's almost like a bird. She is like a legit fairy, but she has this realm where they collect the teeth. And the teeth themselves have lore. They house the memories of your childhood instead of just this creepy being that takes your teeth and leaves a penny, right? Like there's a reason for that. They leave the gift, they take them because they house and cherish those memories that are attached to the teeth from when you were a child, which is so much deeper. The story goes, and it's so magical. And again, I don't want to spoil it. I've been kind of light on plot details because this is one, like I'll spoil the others because you either know about them or they're not really worth trying to keep a secret. Because if I tried to not tell you what the Santa Claus 3 was about and you watch it, you'd be like, what?
Why'd you not tell me?
Yeah. But the Rise of the Guardians is so opposite of that because it's so amazing. You just have to watch Jack discover who he is. You have to watch just the plot holes, or not plot, sorry, the plot twists and all this stuff. As always, I'm going to give the negatives because I think that you should be given a front forward facing of all these stories. There are negatives. One, I feel like there is kind of like there are some continuity errors per se. So when you're not believed in as Jack Frost is at the beginning of the film, it is shown that people run through him. He cannot touch or be seen by mortal man, and that bothers him. Because he is a very playful being. His whole point, his existence is to essentially, as like it's shown, is to be kind of the whimsy in your childhood. Like think about what it was when you were a child and it was a snow day. That feeling you got in your chest about how exciting it was and how amazing it was. Kids today won't know that because NTI and whatever, snow days don't exist anymore. But when at least we were kids and anyone are older than us, you got that feeling. That is Jack Frost, which I think is so original. Talk about the originality. Jack Frost is kind of this character is kind of the being that perpetuates that feeling that you got as a kid. That is just really him discovering that as his center. All the way down to, but anyway, the point, going back to the plot holes, I should say. When Jack isn't believed in, he gets run through. It's kind of like, it looks like it hurts him emotionally that he can't be seen. Later in the film,
like he legitimately is phased through by these kids. If he goes and says hi to them,
they run through him,
running on, and they go straight through him.
Yeah,
like,
he's like, they can't see him.
Yeah,
and so there's a part in the film where he is tasked with taking a little girl home, and he carries her to her bed. How did he do that? He's like he can't even when he's trying to like to interact with people. They run straight through him, cannot be touched, but he's able to pick up this child. Like there are other parts where he's able to manipulate the physical world around him, but when he's trying to get people's attention, they run through him. It just is really weird. Um,
Well, she's a younger kid too, so
but she didn't see him
when was this in the movie?
early.
Towards the front.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe a little bit closer to the middle. Like
Mm.
he was well beyond like you. There's a point where he is believed in, and
There's a level of knowledge I think that it takes for him to be seen because I think there's another boy character, there's another kid who ends up seeing him because his mom told him that Jack Frost was gonna nip at his skin or something like that,
yeah,
and he's like Jack Frost,
who's
and
that?
then he somehow ends up believing him, and Rise of the Guardians is not fresh on my mind, but he somehow believes him, and then that's when it's revealed. It's like, oh my God, you can see me,
Right.
kind of deal. Um,
And that little girl he carries to the bed is this kid. Is that kid's sister?
she's somewhat like
She's
I'm not
young,
going to say nonverbal, but she doesn't speak a lot. She just kind of giggles.
very
And
young.
so there's not necessarily a way that she would know who Jack Frost was.
Yeah, like she's not even like conscious yet.
Yeah.
So it's like it's just weird that he was able to hold her, especially in like once again you add on to it that he's able to manipulate other physical things. There that line is very gray. So that was kind of and that's such a nitpicky thing. The other thing is and there's a couple. The second, or I guess I should say there are three. The second of my major problems is Jack Frost, despite not being believed in, is very powerful. But when the other beings start having the same issues, they get really weak. So it's just like, okay, so does non-belief completely curb your powers? Does it kill you? Or is that just something that only affects those who have been believed in for a while? Because it's odd because when Jack isn't believed in, he is still the strongest of the five. But when, let's just say the Tooth Fairy gets, like, she can fly, she's a fairy. When she stops being believed in, she cannot fly anymore. Jack can still fly. So it's odd that, like, another continuity error that I'm just like, oh, like,
Yeah, like the snow should melt and it should be raining all the time and not snowing and things
right.
like that. And he shouldn't be able to manipulate frost or icing or
But you see
anything
him
like
do
that.
these awesome powers the entire movie.
Yeah.
So that's another odd one. That's just kind of again kind of being nitpicky, but it's like when you're watching it from an adult perspective, it's like where's that gray area? Like there's a line that you guys are describing, but you go back and forth on it all like the entirety of the narrative. The third one, Pitch Black. So Pitch is essentially the opposite of the absolutely amazing character that is the Sandman in this film. Again, the most unique take on the character I've ever seen in my life.
It was my, like, he's my favorite character in the movie.
He's so cool.
Yeah.
Like
And he doesn't talk.
No, he doesn't say a word. He doesn't even have a voice actor. Like he's so unique. He's mute, but he's just obviously like when you think of the Sandman, if you can imagine what would be the coolest way to portray him, that's how they do it.
Yeah.
And he is the bearer of all things
Imagine
dreamy.
Spider-Man, what is it, 3?
Yes.
Spider-Man 3 Sandman.
Yes.
But he's whimsical.
Yes, short, whimsical, very powerful. He glows gold. He's
Yep.
made of this gold sand, and he is just so he's part adorable, but he's also like really witty. Despite not being, if you're able to portray that in a character without him having said one line,
You've done something right.
and they do it. And so it's so cool. But his big power, he's Sandman. So when he is manipulating, so he can make like a whip out of like that's what his main weapon is throughout the film. Is like it's like a whip of sand that he's able to sling and grab things with. It's gold. Boogeyman or Jude Law's Pitch Black throughout the entire film, his main weapon of choice is a black sand version of Sandman, which would make a lot of sense because he is kind of the harbinger of bad dreams. He's the shadow. So it makes a lot of sense for him to be the opposite of Sandman, which one, you want to see them go back and forth more. They don't really. Like you could tell there's something there.
Until they do, and it gets sad.
Yeah, really quickly.
Yeah.
Or it ends, or the film just
yeah.
ends. And so my other problem, and this is the last bit, and if you can tell, this film has the least amount of problems of any of them, at least for mine. And the issue is the Boogeyman's powers are so capped. Like all that he does, he makes a horse like version of the black sand, and that's it.
It's a skeletal horse, and
It-
mind you, it was kind of scary at the time. I remember watching it when I was young.
Yes.
It reminds you of I think they're called the Thestrals in Harry Potter. If you've seen Harry Potter, they are like, it's not quite skeleton, but it is. It's very thin skin. You can see every bone in the
Yes.
body, and they're kind of shadow creatures as well. And so for a young one, I was like, oh god,
scary.
this guy means business when he pulls up with the horses.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But that's it though. Like he makes an arrow, And at some point, he just throws what looks like shadows at Jack Frost. And that's it. That's all you see of this amazing power. And the thing with Sandman is he makes everything you can imagine with
Yeah,
his
he
sand.
a plane,
Yeah,
other. I mean,
a
among other
train,
things.
like
Yes.
he's made other horses, unicorns, like he so you see kind of like you get this idea of like, okay, Sandman is this being. Like he's probably one of the toughest of them all, or the strongest anyway. And then you see the counterpart to him who has a very similar power dynamic and he doesn't do much. And you can call that lack of imagination between Pitch Black and the character that is Sandman. That'd be kind of cool. But it just it's frustrating because it's like, okay, when he shows up at the end with a legion of horses, right? He's got all these horses. You're like, this is the entire movie. Is I've seen you have these horses. Where is the rest?
I was under the impression, and I don't want to spoil it, but I feel like I'm going to here. So avert your eyes, skip ahead a few minutes.
Cover your
But
ears.
Pitch Black, the boogeyman, does end up um, killing the Sandman. And I was under the impression as a kid, and I still am kind of, is did Pitch Black not get a power up from doing that? I thought he had taken his sand.
No, no, he doesn't. He
Okay.
just he dies, and then so he gets more powerful because the belief starts going away in the rest of them, and I think it's meaning to insinuate that the belief is starting to go towards him
The
because
more negative thoughts from kids is
it
the more powerful he gets.
yes. If
Okay.
well, if you're well, they also this is another point too is that they insinuate that he was believed in, but the
Mhm.
thing is, why is the boogeyman not believed in? Because regardless of how old you are, and if you don't call it the boogeyman, you're scared of the dark,
Yeah.
which is kind of what he is. So it's like, but I think that that was what it was insinuating was that more kids were being scared of the dark and having bad dreams than they were having good dreams or having the positive folklore.
Mhm.
So he got more powerful, but I never assumed he absorbed Sandman. But that's a good point. He could have. But then, yeah, we're not going to get there
We're
because
not
that's
gonna
going to
get
spoil
into
so
it.
much. But
So,
watch this film.
yep, and you this is the point where you skip to I didn't give you a time code to begin with. That's my fault. But
I'll figure it out.
whatever.
I'll figure it out.
I would like to talk about with Rise of the Guardian. When I first saw this, this was the world building like Ryan had talked about, but also the new but same like the character. So Santa Claus he dual wields cutlasses. Of course, the Tooth Fairy is this hummingbird like fairy creature. There's the what's sorry, I'm blanking. Easter Bunny is Australian. Um,
6'2".
with boomerangs, and he's a rabbit. Like he's actually like I mean Easter Bunny, but he is not a human. I guess he walks on two
He
feet. He's
looks more
kind of
like a
humanoid.
jackrabbit.
Yeah, and so but he's like super awesome because he's got boomerangs and he's an Australian rabbit. So and then am I
Can you guess
missing
who
one?
Hugh Jackman plays in this movie? Just from us
Yeah,
telling the characters, could you guess who he plays?
and it works.
He
It
does so
works.
well.
You
You
know
don't even
it.
question why the Easter Bunny's Australian.
No, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense actually. So, and then Jack Frost just having the most cool elemental power of control over ice and snow and all of that make him truly that. And that's why I'm wondering if that's where his power comes from. More so is people believe in the weather.
Ooh, is he more elemental?
Maybe that might be why. And I don't know if we see him lose a lot of power once Pitch Black comes into his peak, but I guess not. So Ryan's shaking his head at me saying I'm an idiot. So,
No,
but
you're wrong.
is that it for Rise of the
That's
Guardians?
just please watch this movie and just be impressed by the originality. It is awesome. I concede.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to do a little summary. So that's Rise of the Guardians and Claws. If you're going to add two to the list, these two would be the ones you need to add to your holiday list at the very least. It doesn't have to be Christmas to watch Rise of the Guardians, but it does somewhat take place during Christmas. For the final film, my final film, this is more of my goal is to tell you why you shouldn't take this off of your current Christmas list or why you should add it on there if you're for some reason not already watching this movie. And that is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, 1989. I love old films, the 80s especially. So, directed by Jeremiah S. Chechik. I'm not sure what else he's done, but it was written by John Hughes, who did Home Alone and The Breakfast Club. So, this film follows Clark Griswold, and it's told in like an episodic nature, and where each scene or each episode basically in this movie is a problem that you see Chevy Chase's character Clark Griswold have to be extravagant. He's like the hyperbole of somebody who wants the most grand Christmas gesture. So he has to go get this real tree and he goes and gets it and he has to chop it down himself and then he takes it home on this crappy Ford Taurus minivan hatchback thing. And then it's obviously too big for the living room. So every single thing poses a new problem, and that's kind of how it's told. And a lot of people don't necessarily care for the episodic nature of it. They don't think it's a seamless story, whereas I think it makes it so much more digestible. And so that's the problem. This is how he's screwed it up and or worked his way um, to figure it out. But it usually ends with Clark Griswold not doing so well,
Well,
either getting hurt or
let's think about what it's like being in a normal family day anyway. Like
nothing goes to plan.
yeah, if well, it feels like you talk about episodic. It feels like if I'm with, so I come from a big family, like, and I'm gonna be with my family in the next couple of days for the holiday season. If I woke up at 9 and went to bed at 11, it would feel like a whole season of a television show happened because of the different conversations, the different activities, and the different just whatever. So I feel like that almost adds to it because I know exactly what you mean. But for me, it almost like I felt like I'm actually watching a day in this guy's life or a week in this guy's life.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's a week. It might be told over like several days because there's like an advent calendar that pops
A
up
couple days.
after the scenes that it's like this is now the 24th and it brings you to the one of the second to last episodes. I call them episodes. I mean just portions of this film, but some people don't like that. I'm for it. I just think, and despite what you think about Chevy Chase, I know he's probably had his fair share of problems, and people really don't like this guy.
Chevy Chase being controversial.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But this movie, I think he plays the character so well. I think he is Clark Griswold. I always see him as that, and not so much his TV show stuff. I look at him and I'm like, geez, he's gonna do something. Something's gonna happen. He has to have 25,000 Christmas lights on his house, and there's I'm gonna tell you a scene. I'm gonna spoil it a little bit, but he when he plugs it in and it finally works, the whole city power grid like fades and they have to turn on nuclear backup and the city comes back after he turns his house on. It's small little jokes like that really capture me. I love that kind of humor. And there's also some dirty jokes they're kind of hidden in there. I mean, I don't think it's something you can't show your kids, but there's some things that make me still laugh to this day. So it's one of those that a lot of people already watch it. It's not necessarily underrated, but it's not a movie you should shy away from or forget about because it still captures that kind of meaning of Christmas, whereas Claus was giving you the spirit to do good things and be nice just because love thy neighbor.
Yeah.
This is one of those don't lose the spirit despite the hardships and the just the uphill battle that it is of bringing in a huge family because that's kind of the whole point of the Christmas Vacation is he even though his wife tells him, "Is like I don't know, we never had your parents or my parents, and remember the last time we did this, and they got mad at each other and stuff like that." And Clark's just gung ho. He wants it. He wants a big family Christmas, despite all of the characters that it brings to the table, literally. And I can't help but think about his cousin Eddie in Shitter's Full when he's pumping out his RV into the sewers, in the street, and that plays a key role later as well. But it is just so funny. I saw a Christmas sweater with Shitter's Full written on it. It's still classic. It's one of those ones that should not leave the Christmas list. If you have 5 movies you watch while decorating your house, this should be one of them.
Amazing. So in short, this should be higher on your list or on your list because it feels so real.
Yeah, I think even though it's 1989 and it might be a little dated in terms of everything going on, but there's still like a shopping craze. There's still like and he put a down payment on a pool and the Jelly of the Month Club came in the mail in place of his bonus. And so there's this stress that he wants to put in a pool for Christmas for his family, for everybody to use. So he's a family man, and it's just that's
A wealthy
the point.
one. A wealthy one at that.
Well, not if he doesn't get his bonus,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'll let you guys watch the movie and figure that out how he does end up getting his bonus.
All right. Well, any other thoughts before we let the people enjoy the rest of their holiday?
I will say no. I have nothing else besides there are other National Lampoon's vacations. I have not seen them. I don't think they're as good as there's one they go to Vegas. I'm not sure of the other ones, but I I would watch Christmas Vacation all year just because I like it so much. I think it's the humor's there. It doesn't have to be Christmas for me, but I'm also one person who watches Baby Driver 8 times just cause.
Which is another great movie to watch like that.
Despite actor controversies, there's always seems to be controversies that follow my favorite movies. That's unfortunate, but you win some.
Maybe a couple.
Yeah, not most. Definitely not most. So,
All right.
Ryan, got anything to say about Christmas?
I just can't thank you guys enough for being here. I'm excited for kind of the new year. Got a lot in my personal life coming up in the next few weeks that I'm really excited about. I'm excited for this to see where this goes. If you liked it, please give it a like, give it a share, do what all you need to do, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever this is. Leave a review if there's a comment option. Please, whatever, comment, like, share. You know the drill.
Let us know what we can do better, what we're doing wrong.
Disagree with us.
Disagree with us, please. We want you to create a dialogue.
Yeah.
We strive off of that, and if you're willing, we might even bring you on and let
Yeah.
you spiel.
Or use your comment at the very least,
Yes.
and have it be a plot point, a talking point on the show. We would absolutely love to insert a audience segment within each of our episodes. But other than that, that's all I got. Thank you guys for listening, and Jake, say goodbye to the great people.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays if you're not a Christmas guy.
Merry Christmas, and see you guys later.